Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldai, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are knee deep in a month that we've dedicated to this theme of global leaders. And when you think about global leaders, you can't help but think about phase one. We've got two amazing folks here from that company. By the way, Copenhagen, Denmark is their headquarters, but they are located globally and doing all kinds of things that are helping this industry. And today we have with us Michael Messerschmidt as well as Lau Nørgaard. So great to have you both on the show today.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, everybody, we are live. And so please jump in the chat. No matter where you're from, we know we have a global audience as well. And, ask your questions, give us positive encouragement. We love all of that. And by the way, I'd be remiss not to mention that Viasat is this month's sponsor for Global Leaders Month, and we're very appreciative and thankful for them as well. Okay, let's talk about both of you first. Now, I'm going to say this, but you're going to want to jump right into your company. So refrain from doing that. I'm going to start with Lau. And Lau, if you could tell us a little bit about your professional background and why you joined phase one, that would be awesome.
Well, I've been a photo camera geek all my life. I think most of my darkroom is probably still somewhere buried in my mom's basement. And professionally, I've studied physics and software engineering. My master's degree is in image processing and augmented reality, and have just essentially been lucky enough to join one of the leading imaging companies that also does cameras. So kind of bringing those two sides of my passion and my professional life together in phase one. And I've been with phase one since 2006. So it's obviously been a company where I felt at home.
That's, there's nothing better than marrying up your passion with your profession. And it's so cool to hear that you became a camera geek early on in your career, because as we know, in this industry, it's all about the data. And, you're making such a difference there. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is it's Michael, as you say. I have been around 15 years in the drone industry, and unlike Lau, I don't have a long passion for UAVs. I ended up there fairly randomly. However, the technology really appealed, and I entered the market at a very interesting point where it was still the Wild West. So I've been here doing this for around 15 years. And it's been through the ups and the downs, and a lot of the downs the first 5 years, but been into all kind of application, all kind of drones, been driving that. And then I joined phase one about 4 years ago now, and has been driving the UAV portfolio because I realized what you said, that is all about the data, and so that really appealed for me. So to join a leading company in that space. So.
Absolutely. And by the way, gentlemen, we've got Fire Mech Tech Rob out there. He is one of our super fans, giving us the big thumbs up. Thanks, Rob, for joining us today. And we know there are many, many others out there as well. So phase one, like I said before the show, I see you guys everywhere, especially at the geospatial type shows, the drone shows. Tell us about this company and, what it's all about.
So phase one was founded in the 90s, essentially around the birth of digital imaging, as something that became useful, where the technology got to a point where it could actually be used to make images that could be used for creative, artistic purposes. So the birth of the company was essentially in advertising, in studio photography. And that was the main business for the first many years of the company's history. And when I joined, that was still the case. And we essentially was part of digital photography from its birth. And even like all the way from the beginning, we always worked with the most demanding customers, with the most bleeding edge technology. We did not make like mass market consumer cameras. We made cameras for the photographers working for the most famous brands, making the most iconic images. So super demanding, but of course in a visual creative way. But we succeeded in that by applying core technologies, deep math, thorough knowledge of optics and image sensors and image processing and software and all that. And over the years, that essentially got us involved in a lot of other areas of imaging, because we made the digital imaging components that provided the best image quality, and inside that, the best data quality. We saw customers buy those things that we made for commercial photographers and putting them in airplanes or building them into weird machines for things that we did not imagine.
Yeah.
Because we made the best data. And then over the last 15 years, that essentially became our main business. We still make cameras for passionate photographers that make beautiful images because we are passionate about photography. But it's not where we focus our engineering, our development. It's not the kind of the bulk of the company. It's still our legacy, part of our soul. But now we apply essentially these core technologies, the core know-how across a number of different applications, mainly into spatial imaging, where there is a need for very high quality image data for mapping, surveying, 3D models of cities, environmental monitoring, from manned aircrafts, from satellites, and to a very much growing degree from drones. So essentially in any type of application where small things have to be seen over large areas with a very high certainty, we make components, hardware and software and optical components that helps people do that.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. And, you know, what's really interesting to me is your journey as a company seems to also track, in a way, the drone industry, because when you think about those initial use cases, they really were for photography, right? For cinematography, for real estate applications. And I think as these sensors evolved, including it with your company, you know, it opened the door up to all kinds of things like mapping and photogrammetry and, you know, very complex inspections. And Michael, you know, having spent 15 years in this industry, even though you just joined the company a few years ago, I imagine you would agree with that statement that you've seen this industry evolve and very much similar to the way phase one has evolved. You know, what I'd love to ask you about, because Lau used a word and I loved it. He said the soul of the company. And, you know, that just the way you speak about your company, Lau, it's very clear, you know, how much you love it and the passion you have for it. I'd love to ask Michael a little bit about the culture at phase one, because I think the both of you are representing the company so well in the passion that this company has for imagery and for data.
Yeah, so so I think the culture is interesting because culture drives products, and when it comes into it, phase one, passion is a good word that describes it. It's in our roots to drive based on passion because we can do stuff, and I think also the company has a very entrepreneurial spirit, as our CEO said when I was employed. It's a 30-year-old startup. So in not in a bad way, but in a good way, that they know how to seize new opportunities and take some chances and be at the forefront, because you know drones evolve on a very rapid kind of pace, and still we have products in the market for 5-6 years that is still the leading products. Like it's still the leading, and it's been the same camera fundamentally for the last years. So I think that says a lot about the culture and how much we actually push it to the limits. So I think that's a lot about our culture and this curiosity and also uncompromised. So it's really when you go in and select anything, like our sensor is the best sensor you can get, our storage card is the best storage card, our lenses are the best lenses you can get. So at any point in the camera, it's the best you can get. There's no compromises, and I think that is also a part of the culture.
Well,
it's very inspiring.
Well, it is, and it's no wonder that when I talk to your team, you, Michael, in particular, and then your team, you selected Global Leaders Month because you really are playing such a leading role here and globally. So tell us a little bit about the kind of the scope of where you all are doing business.
Yeah, so the scope is broad. If we just take the geospatial, as that's what we are talking about here today, I'll at least start there. We do as Lau said, we do cameras for drones, but also for manned aircraft. So when we talk manned, it's both helicopters and it's planes. We do the largest mapping projects, I guess, in the world, or at least some of the largest projects in the world. Some of the largest data platforms that do 3D models of cities that is also used for navigation, for searches, uses our cameras. So you'll find our cameras in so many ways you would never imagine it. If you go to any of the big museums in the world, they would use, or high likelihood they'll use our cameras. If you go to any of the big photographers, as Lau said, they use our cameras. Anytime you look at the top performers or the most demanding customers, then there's a chance to use Page One.
Well, and I want to focus on the global presence. So I'm going to go to you, Lau. I mean, I know your headquarters is in Denmark, but you also have regional offices all over the place. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so I think there are multiple things to that. We want to be close to our customers, so we have a presence in most of the world, so that we can work closely with both with our distribution partners, with integrators, with end users. We don't just make cameras, put them in boxes, and ship them. We feel passionate, but we also feel responsibility to make it really solve the problem. So we need to be there. So we have sales and support offices in most of the world. We have a large one in Denver. We have in Hong Kong, Beijing, Tokyo, and a number of smaller facilities around the world. Headquarters and development is in Copenhagen, and then we have manufacturing in Japan. So we do all of our own manufacturing in-house for the most critical parts, because there's a lot of intricacies and secret sauce to adjustment and calibration and so on. But we also work with a lot of partners in that. There's a very large imaging component industry in Japan that we tap into and are an integral part of.
That's amazing. You keep talking about Japan, and fun fact, my son is in Tokyo right now for his summer school session, and I'm really excited about that. I hope someday I get to visit there, because I know it's really amazing.
It's a nice place. I lived there for 2 years with my family as part
of so cool.
The
that is
development
awesome.
of Phase 1.
Oh, very, very awesome. All right, so let's talk about, you talked about image quality, and let's I know we have a video. I want to roll this because I think it illustrates how your technology supports various geospatial and industrial applications. So let's go ahead and roll film.
Yeah, so essentially all cameras, they need some form of shutter that starts and stops the light exposing the image. With film, this mechanical focal plane shutter with like two curtains moving across the frame has been the most widely used. So essentially, it blocks the light. At some point, it opens, and later on, it closes again. And that kind of times the exposure and allows light through for a certain amount of time to make sure that both the brightest and darkest areas are exposed correctly. If a very short shutter speed is required, the second curtain moves across before the first one is all the way across, and this means that the entire image is not exposed at the same time, which causes this geometric distortion for fast-moving objects. So we don't use that for geospatial applications. We use a lens shutter if we need a mechanical shutter, because that closes across the entire image at the same time, so there's no geometric distortion. But for very fast applications, we use electronic shutter. That can either be done as a rolling shutter that exposes the pixels across the sensor sequentially. This essentially, just like the mechanical focal plane shutter, gives a distortion. You see that here, and most digital cameras use that because that is the simplest thing to implement. But a global electronic shutter essentially can freeze all the pixels in the entire sensor at the same time by moving the data into a little memory element in each pixel. And this means that all pixels can be frozen at the exact same moment. And this essentially is necessary to take geometrically accurate images of either fast-moving objects, that could be a rotating wind turbine, or geometrically accurate images of the ground or any other thing from a fast-moving platform. So that could be mapping and surveying from a fixed-wing drone, for example, that does not stop to capture an image, but continues to move at a fast speed. If this was done with a rolling shutter, there would be a distortion across the image that would jeopardize the geometric accuracy of the data.
Wow, learning a lot here. I mean, I know it's so complex how a camera operates, very similar to how actually our eyes and our brain operate as well. And I studied some of that for my Part 107 test. So really, really interesting. So you do all of this, obviously, like we talked about, to ensure the highest data quality. And tell us, how important is data quality and image quality to phase one?
I think it's the core of everything we do. So anybody who has an application where fundamental image data quality does not matter would not end up using phase one products. And then data quality and image quality can mean many things across different applications. I think in most geospatial applications, it is either geometric accuracy. So can we measure the size of something or the distance of something? Can we make maps or 3D models that become geometrically accurate and can be used for measurements of something?
Right.
Or it is a matter of accuracy in the terms of, can we see what we're looking for? So in inspection of, we saw an image before of a power tower, in inspection of power infrastructure, which is a lot of what we do in the drone world.
Right.
It's all about seeing very, very small flaws or cracks or problems in this power tower hardware, essentially. Seeing that, detecting that with a very high accuracy, so that if you fly an inspection mission of a section of power infrastructure, you know that you have seen the flaws. You have not. You're sure you have not missed it. So that's both a matter of how big are the pixels. And the pixels have to be really small, so essentially the ground sampling distance, how far on the actual object are there between the pixels. This defines how small a thing we can see. But that's not enough. We also have to know that the optic properties of the system, the quality of the lenses are good enough that we can really see that. Is the image so sharp? There can also be a big difference between a very bright area and a very dark area. And all of this happens outdoor in bright sunlight. And we all have seen images where you can only see something in one part. So either the highlights are completely blown out and white, or the shadows are so deep and so black that there's nothing left in there.
Right.
And flying an inspection mission and coming back with images where we cannot see anything in the shadows means that anything that by random chance was in the shadow is just not seen.
Yeah.
So data quality, where we know that we can see something on the entire object, and not just that the data is as good as possible, but we also know exactly how good it is. So we know if we can see it or if we cannot see it. But if we cannot see it, we have to change something so we can see it.
Yeah, you can say a lot of what we do is trust. Like when you start scaling and you don't do tens, you don't do hundreds, you do thousands and thousands of assets every single year. then it becomes very important that you cannot control how the weather is on that day. You cannot, like, if you close down a wind turbine park, you have that week to do it. You don't have next week when the weather is better and the sun is in a different angle. You need to be sure you get back. So we spend a lot of time understanding scalability and how data enables scalability. If you don't trust something, you don't scale it. That's a kind of a human nature. Then you would always depend on. Then you create bottlenecks, because then you would still do all the manual labor and you'll still fly slower. You'll still take too many images. If you don't trust, you get it. So this actually enabling that in unknown. So when you don't know where things are, when, on what, then you need a very high trust in the camera that you use. And that's kind of the application that we apply our technology to, actually not only in drones, but in general.
And I think,
well, I imagine.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, Lau,
very nice summed up, Michael. So imagine that you are thinking about inspecting all your power towers with drones and cameras. You try that out with a nice little drone and fly around the tower and take a lot of images and see if you can see all the flaws. That is probably possible with almost any drone and almost any camera. You can just fly until you found them all, and you can fly very close and you can look at all this. So that does not require anything special. But if you then think about how many of these towers are out there, and that you cannot send an expert to fly around each of them and make sure that everything is covered, you have to scale this with automated flight paths and with the productivity of sending a group out there, 2 guys in a car have to do X number of towers in a day. You cannot tweak every single. It has to scale to be productive, and once you start thinking about that, then every single pixel in every single image has to be good, because you only get them once, and you have to have a lot of pixels in every image, because these are very large objects, and if you have to go super close and take a lot of little images, you will never get it done. And the flight planning will be too complex, and there'll be too many images. So we become relevant when you have hard problems that has to scale.
Well, and, look, you're on the dawn of autonomy for a reason, because, as these systems become more and more autonomous, as you say, for purposes of scaling, this kind of system, these kind of lenses are important. So let's talk about your payloads. I want to hear a little bit more. I think you have very specific the cameras for uncrewed aircraft, vehicles, UAVs. So tell us about those, the P5 and the P3, I believe.
Yeah, so let's actually start with the P3, as this the oldest product we have, if you can say. So the P3 is specifically, of course. So basic cameras can take pictures of anything, flat, straight, whatever. However, we position our payloads, and to be able to make sure we create enough value, we are very, very focused on what we spend our time on. So we do vertical structures, and as Lau, one of the best examples is utilities, because we do a lot of that. And that's where, you have aging infrastructure, you have a digitalization of society, which means you need more and more electrification. You cannot bury all of it. You have to have it overground, and then everything kind of becomes an issue. So that's where we spend a lot of our time. So the P3 is first and foremost a payload that you can put onto the DJI 300 and 350 style drones, or any of the mounting drones you use out there, the Inspired Flights, the Harriers, the whatever else is out there that can carry around 3 kilos of payload. Then we work on that product. It's easy just to say, okay, we deliver a camera, but we actually work very intensely with solution partners. So we work with mission planning softwares like Drone Harmony. We work with Epilagio in Sweden. We work with Linea in Switzerland on the mission planning side of it. On the data analytics side of it, we work with very, very specialized analytics companies to make sure that the pipeline works. So we work with eSmart systems a lot. We work with Skycraft. We work with basically all of the companies that works on. Like AI is a very hyped word, but everybody have an ambition to do AI. We work with a lot of those companies because it becomes this, and I hope this is not censored, but shit in, shit out for these companies. So this product really create the best shit. So when you have to put it into your imaging pipeline afterwards, it becomes really, really good. So that's one product. The other product that we are launching that starts shipping here in a few days is the P5, as you mentioned. The P5 is
a few days. So you heard it here first, possibly on the Autonomy. I love big reveals. So tell us about the P5.
Yeah, so the P5 is a product we've been working on for basically 2 years, since me and Lau was on a road trip. We called it a road shop because it was a mix of a workshop and a road trip around the US. Where every day we were driving, and then we were brainstorming in the evening, and then we did some PowerPointing, and then the next day we met with some customers or potential partners, and we kind of iterated the concept. 2 years later, here we are, we have a product, and that product is specifically designed and optimized towards surveying. So here we differentiate a little bit between mapping and surveying. So a lot of cameras out there can create maps, at least from the outset of it, but very few can create accuracy. And we are not talking about accuracy XY, but also or what we call relative accuracy, but also absolute accuracies. And we are not only talking about XY, we also talking Z, because our customers, again, are the most demanding customers out there. They're not good enough with just somewhat okay. So we set out the flag that we needed to get to a 0.5 centimeter, whatever that is in your units, 0.5 centimeter absolute accuracy in X, Y, and Z. Of course, understanding that it's not only the camera, but we want to make sure the camera was not the limiting factor anymore. So a lot of the technologies Lau have talked about, we put it all together. We took our lens technology, we shrunk down the payload, so we halved the weight basically from around 1.4 kilo to 700 grams, so it can fit into smaller fixed wing UAVs. And what differentiates them is that they're flying fairly low and fast. So I'll say 20 meters per second. For that, we still need absolute uncompromised in terms of distortion. So we needed to use our global shutter that Lau explained earlier. We needed to use our that also enabled us that the lenses didn't have to have mechanical shutter, so we can take out any moving parts, which makes it more robust. A lot of technologies kind of came together. So this product here now is purpose built for UAVs. It's all the interfaces, all the connectors, all the trade-offs we made has been to make it the best possible camera for drones.
All right. So I was going to say, you talked about the camera's accuracy, the lens, the shutter speed of the capture. How does all this integrate with existing tools?
So it integrates. So we have what is called the image SDK, and now it gets a little bit nerdy. But to summarize, that makes that some companies like Quantum Systems, they can take our image SDK and they can convert, or they can actually use our images and output JPEGs. And the JPEGs come with already geo-corrected and the right metadata to put it into Trimble. As our partner for the P5 product. So you can take these images, put it right into Trimble. Trimble can process it, and Trimble would then output all the auto photos, the mesh model, the point clouds, whatever you need to do your job. So we just make sure that the pipeline is completely seamless, but we don't necessarily have to do all of it.
Well, holistic end-to-end solutions and partnering with other companies is absolutely the way to go. That's what we're seeing in the companies that are super successful. Let's talk a little bit about the accuracy of the output, because you mentioned Trimble and some of the things you're doing. I think we have an image here we can show with the P5. Walk us through what we're seeing here and why it's important and what makes it different.
Yeah, so if I could start here, Lau, it's just to say that this is taken from our test field here in Denmark. So we have an extensive verification center of our sensors here in Denmark, but we have a number of geospatial assets that we use for verification of accuracy, and in this case here, more sharpness. And from a geospatial point of view, the more accurate you can point to your ground control points where they intersect, that the more accurate your output is going to be. So that's how our shutter speed kind of creates this extremely sharp images from very fast speed. So now, Lau, you can take over.
Yeah. So to be able to reach this target of 0.5 centimeter of absolute positioning accuracy of anything within the survey data being created, that of course requires a high resolution. So essentially, a very fine DSD, so the pixels on the ground have to be super small. In some of our examples here, for example, with the P5 flying at 200 feet, 60 meters altitude, each pixel is 2.6 millimeters on the ground. So that is not very big. Fixed wing UAVs cannot stand still in the air. They always fly forward. So we would need a shutter speed fast enough that we could freeze that motion. That essentially the shutter can only be open for such a short time that even something that is only 2.6 millimeters, like a tenth of an inch, will be completely frozen. And this required this global shutter. It's simply not possible to do with a mechanical shutter. It's not possible to freeze that motion. In addition, the global shutter means that there's no geometric distortion across the frame. And in addition to that, also when flying at such a low altitude, at a relatively fast speed, the frame rate has to be fast enough that you can get a high overlap between consecutive images to also reconstruct all the data with a high accuracy. So quite a few things went into actually achieving this, and also the positioning of the camera within the drone. Of course, there's GPS and there's an IMU that can georeference the data. Most cameras somehow trigger this IMU and gets a georeference tag, and the images was captured somewhere around here. Our cameras, they put out a very, very accurate trigger, absolutely in the middle of the exposure, so we know exactly where it was, not just where about it was, but exactly where it was when the image was taken. Most general purpose cameras do not really do this. And also each of our cameras, we calibrate them. We do a geometric calibration in a laboratory in the factory. Essentially, it's a very large room. It's a room that is like 10 meters wide and 3 meters tall and 18 meters long, full of thousands of little calibration targets. So each individual camera is very accurately geometrically calibrated before it leaves the factory. So it's not one thing. It's like a whole combination of little details that all have to be good enough to achieve this. Essentially, it's the weakest link of the chain thing. If something is not as strong, then it will break.
Well, and not only that, but as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about the speed at which some of these images are being taken, and the sensor, there has to be stability of the entire unit, right? And you also mentioned IMUs. You mentioned some of your partners, and I think maybe that's a great segue to talk a little bit more about them, because like you said, your product is only as good as its weakest link, and you're also relying on other partners, and you've got some amazing ones. So do you want to give shout outs to any of the companies you're partnering with, either on the P5 or just kind of in general, to help make the best possible products and to secure the best possible data?
I think there's a lot of partners, and it would be dangerous to start mentioning just a few, because true. Really, it really takes a village to deliver these solutions here. However, just because we are launching the P5, I think that I want to emphasize. Here we deliberately from the beginning decided to launch with a UAV. So we knew that it worked in the UAV. We know that they used the camera correctly. We embed all the metadata as it should be embedded. We process the data correctly afterwards, and then we chose the top of the list when it comes to surveying data. So Trimble, they do all the total station. They know better than anybody else out there what it means to be accurate. So we chose the top of the list because we need to match the camera with the right partners. So for this specific launch here, I want to kind of shout out to those two. However, there's a lot more that could be added to that list.
Totally understand. You start almost like, you win the Emmy and you start listing off all the people you're thanking. And if you don't have your sheet in front of you, you're going to miss somebody. And then that's just embarrassing. But no, I get it. But no, it's great shout out to those two companies for this particular camera. So I want to talk, our time is flying, as I knew it would, because like you're doing so much. I want to really dive into some case studies now. Because, it's one thing to talk about the lens and see some of the images and to explain kind of how the global shutter works and things like this. But understanding some of these, how it's been used in the real world very successfully, I think is really helpful. So tell us about some of these, like something about Hawaii's wildfire. Like tell us about some of these use cases.
Yeah, so we can. I think that tells you how broad our cameras are applied, and when it comes to our target vertical for the P3, Hawaii wildfires, it's not the primary application. However, we also do. We really want to engage and where we can see a lot of value. And for the Hawaii case, they had a huge area. It was 300 acres, so that's 12 square kilometers that they needed to map out. And the more accurate you do this mapping, the more accurate you can do change detection. The more accurate you can deploy your kind of rebuild or rescue assets. So
Michael,
we together with
in Maui, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was this in Maui with the recent horrific fire in Lahaina? And so, if I don't know if we're able to go back to the original image, my Michael in the background, my Wizard of Oz in the back. If we can flip. Okay, so is this all the damage, or is the image, I'm looking at it, so it could be reversed maybe for the audience. Is one a before and one an after, or are they both after? It's hard for me.
These are both. I don't know those two specific images, but they're both after. So we did only afterwards. So
yeah.
So, but for now on, you could do something when it's rebuilt again. You can plan it. You can have your road. Especially when it comes to infrastructure, you need good infrastructure to send out your engineering vehicles and rebuild stuff. This here specific here is a 0.5 centimeter, so it's a 5 millimeter details, which is if you can imagine 12 acres where everything is a 0.5 millimeter. That's wow. Absolutely ginormous data set. And here they actually timed it, so it took half the time that it would do with another camera, and you got about double the amount of data or quality in the data for the decisions. So this was a critical. We did that. Now it's a shout out with something called 8th Axis. They actually did the flying, and there was a company which slips mind, but they did all the processing, which is quite an achievement.
Well, it is.
This data set is available, by the way. If somebody want to see it, it's available on the internet. The full data set where you can zoom in.
Oh, where is it available, Michael? I'm sorry.
I would have to come with a link. I haven't, but I can. Okay, the link is out there somewhere.
Yeah, we'll get that to folks. You know, it's amazing how, you know, as horrific as that disaster was, the use of drones in so many different ways in the aftermath of it, even during it. I didn't know that phase 1 was part of those recovery efforts. Makes a lot of sense, and that's, you know, that's just a great application of you know, what you're doing. You also let's talk about, so let's jump to a whole different use case, flare stack inspections. You know, so this is kind of the energy crowd out there. You know, I just went to the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition Symposium back in June. Early adopters of this technology, so important. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think that shows the width. So energy in general, so both the production and the distribution of energy is where we have 90% of our business. So the reason why we took this one here, because they were trying to do this with other cameras that didn't have the same resolution, the same lenses, the whole stack, and they tried to do it, and they melted down a few cameras before they came to phase 1, because they have some requirements from the regulators of how to inspect, how often, at what detail, and they're very interested in corrosion. So, and for detecting corrosion down to a millimeter level, you need to have a certain GSD, which made that there was basically just the phase 1 camera that could do that. When it comes to other, if I can continue down the case studies for, and they're all on our website. So,
but hey, Michael, before you do, I want to jump back because I missed this comment earlier, and I think it's really important. FireMech Tech Rob out there for your Hawaii images, he said this, quote, "That was amazing clarity in your sample photo for the height that was taken. Could be extremely useful in search and rescue. At what speed are they flying? I believe the height was 200 feet.
Yeah, so that's the height. The speed was with M300, so probably 6 meters per second. The difference here to his comment is that with the P5, you could do that at 18 meters per second. You could do better than that at 18 meters per second.
Wow.
So with the P5, we have a 35 millimeter lens. That means that you do a 0.5 centimeter accuracy from 60 meters. And the coverage you can achieve per flight hours is, I don't have the math here, but it's absolutely extreme. So now we did this with a rotary. If we had done it with a P5 instead of a M300 drone, or with a quantum drone, you could probably have cut it in not even half, maybe a third of that you could have cut it down to, because we fly at least twice the speed. So roughly half that. So the one you saw with the DJI drone was about 5 days. So with the Trinity drone, you could probably do it in 2 days, something in that range, and that's 12 square kilometers at a half centimeter. So it's very scalable that way.
We see a lot of opportunity in helping in cases where there is a need, not only for very high quality mapping surveying data, but a need for having that very quickly. So that could be in search and rescue, but also in like in post disaster management. So like a wildfire, an area has been badly damaged. We need to assess the damage and plan how do we handle this over the next hours, days, weeks, months. So I think with the P5, we believe there will be a lot of applications in that.
Well, you know, Lau, as I'm listening to you, and Michael, you mentioned quantum systems. I know they're doing so much in the Ukraine, you know, and with my military background, I'm thinking, boy, you know, this kind of clarity in battle damage assessments, in you know, sadly, archaeological and heritage sites are getting destroyed, you know, to be able to document these things. You know, so many applications. I mean, I think the list is endless. Unfortunately, this show is not endless, and we only have a couple minutes left. So I want to make sure that we're covering everything you wanted to talk about. We did the big P5 reveal. We talked about the global shutter, and you know, all the things you're doing, the different use case applications. I want to talk about, because you guys are all over the place. You know, where might we find you phase one if someone wants to, you know, they maybe can't get to Copenhagen, but they want to see the P5, they want to interact with your team. Are you going to any of upcoming events anytime soon or during the rest of this year?
So we are at S3 user conference as we speak. Not us, but we have colleagues there.
Oh yeah,
the P5
San Diego. Yeah.
So the P5 is there, the P3 is there. We have a booth there, so that's a good chance to stop by and talk if anybody's going. The next one is commercial UAV. We'll be there with a big, no, not a big. We'll have a stand there at commercial UAV. I'll have somebody from the Copenhagen team there. I won't be able to join myself, but we'll have somebody there. After that, we have Triple Dimensions. Intergeo in Germany. If somebody's going to that one, is big. Then we have a very big presence at Intergeo, and then we have I'll also be there, and then we have potentially Triple Dimension in the end of the year, and of course we are planning road shows. So if somebody's interested, especially in the US, we have very strong distribution partner, Gresco, and others in the US that can help us demo either the P3 or the P5 together with our own staff there. So plenty of chances also on a more ad hoc level.
I was going to say, I think you made up a new term, the road shops, the workshops on the road. So you got road shops coming up. You just created a whole new word. You're welcome. We'll use that as one of your new tagline. Check out our road shops. So that'll be super cool. So how can actually people then, you know, whether they're going to these events or not, they want to just reach out. How can they learn more about phase one, the P5, everything you're doing, or even just reach either one of you?
Yeah, so they can definitely reach both Lau and myself, and we can help if we are not the right people. Otherwise, we have a good newsletter you can sign up to, where we share news about our developments, about our case studies, our amazing customers and partners. So I think that's some of the best ways. LinkedIn, we have a very active LinkedIn presence as well. So we are there. We are at least most of the channels.
Okay, awesome. And well, we are pretty much at time here. One thing I want to say is please let me know who from your team is coming to Commercial UAV. Shameless plug. I'm going to be doing the 4th annual Flash Mob Networking Happy Hour on that Monday evening before the actual thing kicks off. I'll be wandering around, and we'll also be doing a full crew live stream from the floor. So we'll get you guys involved. But Great to have you. I learned so much just speaking with you. Really can't wait to see the new pictures with the P5 and the new applications as the industry continues to grow, become more autonomous using your cameras and your sensors. So thank you so much for this. Everybody out there, thank you for jumping in. By the way, Mark Genug from the Nevada test site had jumped in the chat at some point, and I forgot to mention him. He's also one of our super fans. Great to see you out there, Mark, and everybody else. But for now, that's all she wrote. We are out here.